8 months ago, I found out about the infected blood inquiry. Since then, I found myself on a very steep learning curve, realising more than I could have imagined. The reasons for my father's death at the age of 50, the reasons behind my mother's chronic alcoholism and depression, which led to her death at the age of 58, and the abnormal, distant relationship between myself and my brothers. I'd like to thank everyone who took this seat and shared their stories. Stories which have many similarities with my own. But for this inquiry, I would never have known them. From what I have learned over the last few months, I have a few points I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight. I have an issue with the sheer lack of transparency from the NHS towards patients in their care. My mother blamed herself for infecting my father with HIV from Factor VIII that she believed she had administered. This guilt drove her to a life of alcohol dependency and ultimately death. And knowing what I know now, I can't help but wonder if the truth was told from the beginning, would my mother have felt as guilty, and would she possibly be still alive today? The secrecy that was forced upon my family, secrecy that has lasted to this very day, by the absolute terror and fear of being stigmatised, in my opinion, could most certainly have been avoided. The deliberate scaremongering in the 1980s by government-sponsored advertising campaigns created an environment of fear and further legitimised the stigma that surrounded HIV and Hep C sufferers. The government and these ad campaigns conveniently avoided telling the truth of what was going on in NHS hospitals with NHS supplies of contaminated blood products. My father, like thousands of others, placed his trust in the NHS doctors to make the best decision for his health and well-being. The knowledge of the dangers of blood pooling was in medical circles and the NHS well known from the 1960s. Being an immensely cheaper way of making blood products such as Factor VIII, surely at the very least, the pharmaceutical companies who manufactured these blood products should have been obliged to guarantee that only the best blood would be used in this mass manufacturing of product, knowing that one infected donor would infect an entire batch of pooled blood. These same pharmaceutical companies collected blood from the cheapest possible sources, such as prisons, greatly increasing the chance of having an infected donor. In my opinion, given all this, someone was certainly to blame for my father's death. Should it be a pharmaceutical CEO who made a decision to buy cheap blood from prisons? Or perhaps a government minister who looked the other way whilst infected blood products were dished out on their watch? Or even maybe a doctor who prescribed blood products knowing the increased dangers and chance of infection? These are all very distinct possibilities. But I know one thing for certain. Although my mother blamed herself for my father's death, she was certainly not to blame. Another innocent life taken by guilt, a guilt that belongs to someone else. This family secret that has a huge ongoing effects on my brothers and I should never have been our secret to keep. This secret belongs solely to the NHS, the government and the pharmaceutical companies. And thanks to Sir Brian and the inquiry team, neither I nor my family have to keep this secret anymore. My father's name was Peter Donnelly. He was murdered in 1989 by lethal injection of contaminated blood products supplied and prescribed by the NHS, imported by the government from the US pharmaceutical companies. Thank you.
Mark, if you just wait there one moment. I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask Mr. Lloyd. No, there's nothing.
And just remains for me to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.